Okay, as promised, I'm going to go through the books I have read, the books I'm reading, and the books I have yet to read. So, I read this a few days ago. I ordered it about 2 weeks ago. Warning to the West by Solzhenitsyn. And these are more or less his speeches in the United States in the 70s and an interview with the BBC around the same time, I think. It's short. You could read this in 2 hours or less. Some parts of it are interesting, other parts I find a bit boring, but overall it was worth reading. So that's Solzhenitsyn, Warning to the West. Bill Bryson, At Home. I do like reading his books. I've read several of his books. The titles of them are at the back of it, so I'll have a look. What have I read by him? I've read A Short History of Nearly Everything. I've read The Thunderbolt Kid, Notes from a Small Island, Notes from a Big Country, A Walk in the Woods, which I do recommend. I highly recommend that. It's about trekking and hiking through the Appalachian Trail, or Appalachian, whatever way you want to pronounce it. And what else have I read? I think that's it. So he has more titles I haven't read. What I like about Bryson is I like his writing style. I think he's very humorous. I might not be aligned with him politically. I think it leaks out every now and then. For example, the very final page of this book, it just suddenly talks about climate change. Just the very last page, and it's like half a page, just swivels on to climate change. But he is an intelligent man, and he does a lot of research, and you will read some really interesting stuff. For example, when wigs became popular, the aristocracy would use flour to whiten them. And there was a shortage of bread, I think, in France. And when the peasants found out that most of the flour was going to the aristocrats for their wigs, there was uproar, as you can imagine. That's one of like millions of things he'll tell you in a single book. Really good writer. I do recommend At Home. Just to give the background, yeah, I don't know, was he renting it, but he lived in a rector's house in England, and he starts going through the different rooms and he starts researching the previous owner or owners. Marsham, I think, was his name, and he goes through the England of that time. But then, in typical Bryson fashion, he'll go through many different epochs in many different parts of the world. Just facts. He throws these little facts at you. Okay, I read this a few weeks ago. The Antichrist by Nietzsche. It's worth reading. It's a bit heavy in parts. I had to slow down now and then, but overall, yeah, it's a good read. And it shows you the dangers of Christianity. It really does. So if you're starting to go down that rabbit hole, this will bring you down quite deep. The Metamorphoses by Franz Kafka. I've already spoken about this book in previous videos. It's very short. You can read this at on one sitting, whatever, at one sitting. Absurdist literature. Highly recommended. Read this about 3 weeks ago. Read it in 2 days. I wasn't hooked by it at all. The State of Place. I'm translating that directly. I don't know what the original title is. I don't know what the translation is in English. It's a play. It's about a plague on an Andalusian town, and you've got these different characters, and some of the characters are abstract nouns such as nothingness, etc. Didn't grab me. There are parts of it that made me think of the scamdemic. Read this a few weeks ago. I think I finished it about a fortnight ago. I do like Crichton, and I'd never heard of this book, Micro. It's what you'd expect from this type of genre. The characters are, yeah, fairly one-dimensional, I would say, which you would expect. But it's not about the characters; it's about the story itself and the concept. And the idea is that some company is able to shrink things down to tiny sizes, and they're able to shrink machines down. And the idea is it's for big pharma. They're trying to harvest different plants in Hawaii and different fungi and all that. So they shrink people down to operate the machines. And typical cutthroat business, anyone who happens to go into that laboratory is going to be sliced to pieces by nanobots. I looked up, because I'd never heard of this book, I looked it up, and there was some review about the book, and this was from maybe 2 years ago, and they were saying they were going to make a film, and they were saying this could be the next series of films that would be up there with Jurassic Park. So I don't know if they've made this film or not, but anyway, that's what they were saying. Michael Crichton, Micro. Yeah, I've spoken about this book. I really enjoyed this book. Roland Huntford, Race for the South Pole. The Expedition Diaries of Scott and Amundsen. Great book. All right, the books I'm reading at the moment. So I ordered 3 books from Edward O. Wilson. I think it's from the Anthropocene trilogy. I'm 80 pages into this. This is where I'm at home. I love reading about biology and evolution and all that. And Wilson, he was a great, I would say he was a great scientist. He was a great thinker. He was also a great writer. And I'm delighted. I'm 80 pages in. I think this book is about 300 and something pages. So I'm delighted to know that I've lots more to read, plus 2 more books by this guy. The Social Conquest of Earth. And he's more or less going through how we became dominant in the world, and how there's no other species that has the sophistication of humans, apart from, to a lesser degree, obviously, ants and termites, wasps, well, not really wasps, bees, honeybees, etc. If you like science, it's heavy in parts, but stick to it, and yeah, it really opens up your mind. The Social Conquest of Earth. And this is what I'm also reading. I read a page a day. Alice im Wunderland. So these are the German English books, the parallel textbooks. And this is by a company called Anaconda. I bought a number of books, so I'll show them in a second. A page a day, and when I get a bit faster, I'll do 2 pages a day. All right, yeah, there are 2 more books that I could say I'm currently reading, but this one I started at the end of August, and I read about half of it. Vladimir G. Korolenko. I got this in the second-hand bookshop, and it's novels and short stories. I've read a few of the novels. God, it's a lot of, how many pages? It's like small print, and let's have a look. Yeah, it's over 1,200 pages of small print. I'll get back to it at some stage. Yeah, some of the novels are quite good. In parts they can be slow, but that's what you kind of expect with Russian, or in this case, a Ukrainian writer. So Vladimir G. Korolenko. And there's a picture of the guy. Right. And I bought this. I started this in January. I haven't really touched it in the last number of months. Now that I'm in German, maybe I don't know. In 2 years' time, I might return to this. Reading Crime and Punishment in Russian, a parallel text. I think I got about 40 pages in. Yeah, so if you wanna learn Russian, maybe don't start with this book. I like to go I like to go in the deep end, and even a lot of Russian people I know said I was crazy for trying to read this. They said it would be difficult for them to read because it's like old Russian. But yeah, I think I will dip in and out of it now and then, just to look at the Cyrillic text and memorize a few words. But it's definitely on the back burner now. Right. Okay, the books I'm going to read in the next number of months. Flaubert, Madame Bovary. I've never read this. I've heard it referenced many times, so that's on the list of books that I shall read. Yeah, my camera is screwed. Camera on this phone. A Fall of Moondust by Arthur C. Clarke. I read about 2 years ago, Childhood's End. I don't usually read, space science fiction books, but I really did enjoy A Childhood's End, so I will read this. So these books here were picked up in a second-hand bookshop, and I bought them at stalls. It's like a book festival. P.D. James. I think I read one of her books about 20 years ago, but I picked it up anyway. The Lighthouse. One of my favorite writers, Tom Wolfe. I Am Charlotte Simmons. I read a few of his books, Bonfire of the Vanities, and what was the other one? With a character called Chokum Charlie. Can't remember. But I've read 2 of his books. His novels are massive. Like, they're massive novels. Take you weeks to read them, but a fantastic writer, Tom Wolfe. And this is another one I will read. David Simon, Homicide, A Year on the Killing Streets. All right, and the other books that have come in that I ordered over the last number of weeks, couple of weeks. So this is the second book from Edward O. Wilson, The Meaning of Human Existence. This is the third book in that trilogy, Anthropocene trilogy, Edward O. Wilson, Half Earth, Our Planet's Fight for Life. And these are the rest of the German English books. Der Zauber von Oz. Okay, by Lyman Frank Baum. George Orwell. Farm der Tiere, Animal Farm. I hope to read this at Christmas. I hope to have finished Alice in Wonderland and start this over the Christmas. Read this over the Christmas. Obviously, it won't be the first time I've read it. I've read it like 4 or 5 times over the years. H.G. Wells, Die Zeitmaschine. And finally, George Orwell, 1984. So what is that in German? 1184, Zeisbacher Ausgabe. Bilingual edition, or whatever. So that's it. I have enough books to keep me going for the next 5 or 6 months. Until soon, and happy reading.